my name is Rachel and I'm here today to film a Victober video. One of the things that I said I really wanted to do while I was home was film my favourite books that I've read that were released during the Victorian period. I decided to make that today because I've been struggling over this list while I've been home. I think this is officially the list, how it has to go. I think I'm happy with it, so we'll see. I have 10 books to talk to you about. There are a few authors mentioned more than once, which surprised me. I didn't think that that would happen, but it happened. Yeah, I'm just gonna get straight into it because I feel like I'm going to ramble a lot. Okay, so I'm gonna start with a book that is one of the most popular books of the Victorian period, and for many, the first book for them on this list. This is the 10th book for me on this list. It only just made it into this list, but there you go. It is Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. This is in the beautiful Penguin Classic Deluxe editions. Yeah, I really like these. I think they look like tattoo art but on books, and I just think they're really cool. They have bedecked edges and French flaps and stuff. They're very pretty. I don't know why I'm talking about them because it's nothing to do with the book, but that's what I just said anyway. So this was published in 1847 under the pseudonym Curabell. I think this one had Curabell, and this is obviously a book that everyone has heard of. It's a difficult one. This is a very well loved book for me, and there's things that I love so much in this book that I had to put it in this list. I love the independence of Jane. I love just Jane as a character and the way that she's presented. I love Charlotte Bronte's writing. I love the relationship between Jane and Rochester, even though it's very problematic. I just enjoy banter between people who are kind of shitty and sarcastic with each other. That's something I really enjoy, especially in classics, so that it kind of had to be here. But I do have problems with it, and one of the things is that I just think it needed a massive edit. There's just all of that bit after a dramatic moment when she goes with her cousin, and there's just pages upon pages upon pages upon pages. It feels like 400 pages or something of just bump, and I wish they got to the point more. So yes, this had to be here because there's things that I love so much about it, but there are things that I do not love so much about it, so it couldn't get higher than 10. So yes, this is number 10. Number 9 is a textbook. I don't have a copy of this book. I only have that it's in this book because this is one of the books I studied for my Victorian course at university, and I read it in here. So I don't actually have a physical copy of it on its own. And this is basically here just as a prop for me to hold up because I like holding things up. The book is Mrs. Warren's Profession by George Bernard Shaw. This is a play that was published in 1893, and it is one of my favourite plays. So it's right at the end of the Victorian period, and it's a bit racy. It's about a woman who used to be a prostitute and now she works as a madam. So she's, you know, not very well liked as a Victorian character, but basically she's trying to justify her job and her profession and all of that sort of stuff to her daughter, who's not really on her side with things. And it's just such a fantastic play. I love it so much, and I was really surprised with it. It was one of the last things we studied at university, and it was one of those that I almost didn't read because it was so near the end and I was so tired and just not wanting to read anything anymore. But I'm really glad that I did, and it was so good, and it's one that I just always remember, and I've never reread it and I want to, but I still just remember everything just so clearly. It's just such a good play. I would highly recommend it if you've not picked it up. Book number 8 is Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. So this was first published in 1891. It was serialised when it was first published, but then it was also censored, so it's kind of not the full one, but I think the full one was later published that year, so it's not so bad. The full version came out pretty soon after. This is the first Thomas Hardy book that I picked up. This is one of the first classics I read. I know that apart from the ones I read as a kid, the first thing that I read was Wuthering Heights. This is definitely one of the ones that closely followed that. This book basically follows Tess, who her family kind of figure out that they have a great family behind them and they don't have a lot of money, and the dad says, we need to get in touch with this family that we've found out we've got that have great relations with lots of money, and we need to try and, you know, get in with them so we can have some more money. And so they send their daughter Tess out to meet one of her relations, and it's all about her meeting her cousin, and I think he's her cousin anyway, meeting him, and sort of the fallout from meeting them and how the story progresses after that. I don't really want to say much because there's just a lot that goes on in this book, and I think it's good to not know it. I think I knew a little bit, but I didn't know half of the stuff that happened in here, and that was part of the reason that I loved it so much. I had to put this on this list because I just remember falling in love with Thomas Hardy when I read this. Thomas Hardy's writing for me is one of the most glorious things in the world, like in the entire world, and I remember that there's so much about farming in here, and I remember as I was reading it, because I read it quite fast, just thinking, why am I interested in this? I don't care about farming, this should be really boring. And it wasn't boring, and I just kept reading, and it was because of Thomas Hardy's writing, because I love his writing so much. However, I will say on a side note, I think if I had finished one of the books that I am currently reading for Victober, that it would have taken the place of this book, because it is also by Thomas Hardy. I am falling so in love with it that I think it might have kicked this off the list, and that is Two on a Tower. I'm about halfway through Two on a Tower and I love it so much. I don't know why, because it's like, it's just not as action-packed as his other books, but it's just so focused on like a relationship and his writing style, and I'm enjoying it so much. So this has a tentative position. It might lose its position by the end of October when I finish that book, but for now it's number 8. For number 7 we have Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. This is a gothic novella that was first published in 1886 and is fantastic. So I think most people have heard of this because of just Jekyll and Hyde in popular culture as like people having a good and a bad side, but the book is definitely worth a read. This is a fantastic book, and I read it really fast. I know it's short, but I just wasn't expecting to like it enough to read it fast, because I read this after failing to read Dracula for the 3rd or 4th time, because I was like, I hate Dracula, and I was pushing through trying to read it for one of my university essays, and I was like, I just can't even do it. I cannot do it. I've still not finished Dracula to this day. I never want to, never will. But yeah, so that had happened, and then straight after that we read Frankenstein, which I really enjoyed, but I hadn't finished because it was such a big book and it's very like long to read. So then I picked this up and was like, oh for God's sake, here we go, another gothic novel that I'm not gonna get through. But I flew through this one and enjoyed it so much, and there's a lot of like science in here which I wasn't expecting, but I really enjoyed. I would highly recommend this. This is great. The next thing I have is a play. This was one of the most surprising books I've ever read. So it is The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. I read this play I think around when I was in college. I definitely read it before I went to university. I was daunted to read this. I wanted to pick up some Oscar Wilde. I kind of wanted to read The Picture of Dorian Gray and was like, I'm not sure. I feel like I should read this first because it's a play. I feel like I should get a feel for his writing before I go into his actual like book. He's only got one. I feel like I should be ready before I go into it. So I was like, okay, I'll pick this up. But this sounds so serious. I was like, The Importance of Being Earnest. It sounds like a very serious play that's going to deal with really serious matters. And so I was a little bit daunted when I opened it up, but you know, I decided to read it, and I think because I was expecting so much seriousness, this was even better. It just blew it out of the water. This is so funny, it's so satirical. It was first performed in 1895, but I'm not quite sure when it was actually like first in a book kind of format. This is just, oh my god. It's basically just a comedy about people with mistaken identity and the same name and things like that. And it's just everything. I love this play so much, and I really want to pick up some more of Oscar Wilde's plays. I wanted to try and pick up some more before I went back to Switzerland actually, but I'm not sure whether I'm going to get a chance to, so we will see. But I really love this play. This is really funny. If I ever get a chance to see this at the theatre, I definitely would, because I think it would be hilarious. Next we have probably the first classic I actually did ever read. I talk about Wuthering Heights a lot, but Wuthering Heights was like the first classic where it was like a proper classic that's daunting, that I read on my own, that sort of stuff. But this is probably actually the first one that I read, and that is Alice in Wonderland. I used to have this on tape, and I used to have some Jekyll and Mr, some Howard Henry, and The Lord of the Rings. And I used to listen to those tapes every night before I went to bed. I was adamant that I couldn't sleep without listening to something. So I basically know this story word for word because I just listened to it all the time on repeat. Like, they were my only tapes. I listened to them for about 7 years on repeat so I know them very well, and this is just, I can't not put it in this list because I just remember it as being such a big thing of my childhood and listening to it so many times that I just can't not put it here. So this was published in 1865 by Charles Ludwig Dodgson, which was the pseudonym for Lewis Carroll. This is about Alice. Obviously Alice falls down a rabbit hole and gets lost in Wonderland, and yeah, I just love this. When I went to university we studied Through the Looking Glass, and for how many times I've read Alice in Wonderland, I had never read Through the Looking Glass, and so that was really nice. And I must say, like, the thing that I love of Lewis Carroll is that his writing is so nonsensical and just so crazy, but at the same time it's so rooted in such like perfect form, and it's written so well, and it's just, I feel like it couldn't be a success at being so crazy if it wasn't so well done, which I really noticed with Through the Looking Glass and the way it's like formatted through a chessboard. I just think it's like just so good. He is such a master of writing, and so yeah, this had to be here because I love it. Next we have a book that was quite a surprise to me that I ever liked it based on my experience reading it, which sounds weird, but it is Hard Times by Charles Dickens. So this was published in 1854, and this is one of his, I think it's his 10th book. It's a lot later in his long list of accomplishments, and this is, I think, the first Dickens book that I ever read. I have also read Christmas Carol, but I only knew that I'd seen a play of it when I was a kid, but reading it, I only read it a few, like 2 years ago. But I think this was actually the first thing that I had read all the way through by Dickens. It's really difficult because when I first read it, obviously it was one of the first things we picked up for university. We did it in first year. It was one of the like hardest texts I'd studied, because everything before that had been things like, we did like Of Mice and Men and stuff like that. I'm not saying those things are easy, but they're easier than something like this, because this is, it's hard to explain how I feel about this. Like, me and my friends always used to just say about it was a hard time to read this book. Like, yeah, and it was a hard time to read, but it was one of those where the minute I closed it, I loved it, which is just insane to me. It's insane that I read it and didn't enjoy it so much. I was like, oh, I can't wait to finish this, oh my god, blah blah blah, and then I shut it and was like, that was phenomenal. That just seems like a really polar opposite of what a good reading experience should be, which means that I definitely want to reread this because I want to see how I would find reading it a second time. But this is really, really good. This is basically about a little place called Coketown, which is supposed to be based on like a Northern English kind of Manchester or Leeds, like a big industrial town during the time. And we basically have this kind of polarizing view of, I think it's like fact versus fiction, or fact versus dreams, or it's basically like everything should be grounded in fact and the real and the true and all of that sort of stuff. And we have someone in this book who is a father figure who is very like fact, and then we kind of go outside of that and learn more about it. And yeah, he also talks a lot about industrialisation, about workers' rights and workers' unions and all that sort of stuff. It's just a very interesting novel to read. If history is something you enjoy, this is a book that you would get a lot from, and I just really enjoyed it in a very, very weird way. This is one of the books in my life that I had the weirdest reading experience with, and it's weird to say that it's number 4 in my favourite Victorian books, but it definitely is. So yeah, there's that one. The next book I have is a surprise entry. When I originally thought of making this video, I did not think that this book would be anywhere near this video because I hadn't read it, so I didn't even consider that it could be in this list, but now it's in the list. And it is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I don't know if this book would stay in the list. It might be that I've only just read it and that might be why it's here, but I really enjoyed this book. So number one, this is one of the beautiful Barnes & Noble leatherbound copies, and this is like The Picture of Dorian Gray and Oscar Wilde's other works, and it's so pretty. I have a few of these. So I recently read this. I listened to the audiobook by Stephen Fry, which was amazing. He is just such a good audiobook reader, and I think for me, I don't have the connection with him and Harry Potter because I always listened to the Jim Dale ones when I was a kid, so I don't really like him reading Harry Potter. He isn't the Harry Potter reader in my eyes, and so it's cool to have him read other books. I feel like other people would feel weird because they're like, he's the Harry Potter guy for them, but for me he's not, and he has such a good voice for classics that I really enjoyed listening to him read it. He had a perfect voice for Lord Henry as well. He voiced that really well. I will say one thing though, if you do get the audiobook, I knew this because I'd already started reading the book before, and one of the things that had been my favourite thing about Dorian Gray was at the beginning of it, there is this preface, and it's about a page and a half long, and it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever read in just the history of language and literature. Like, it's something that I think I first read it when I was at college, and I hadn't even read Dorian Gray, but it's always something that stuck in my mind, and I've read it a lot of times even though I hadn't read the book, because I really enjoy it. It's just so beautiful, and that is something that the audiobook doesn't read. It just goes straight to the story. So if you do listen to that audiobook, you should definitely look up the preface first, because it's just so beautiful. I don't understand why they didn't have that read on there. So it's basically the story of a man called Oscar Wilde, who is a little bit confused and all over the place in his life, I would say, but he's quite young, he's a gentleman, and it's like first world problems kind of confused and everywhere, if that makes sense. And he is basically painted by one of his friends, and the painting is so beautiful, and he enjoys the painting and hopes for some things, and it goes from there. Don't want to ruin it for anyone who's not read it. But yeah, the thing that I loved about this book is that I started reading it and I couldn't put together the Dorian Gray that I was reading about and the Dorian Gray from popular culture. So I've seen quite a few things, like I've seen The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, I think he's in, and Penny Dreadful, he's in that, and the view of him and the Dorian Gray that's presented in these things is not the Dorian Gray that I was reading about in this book. And so I was reading it thinking, like, how have people extrapolated this Dorian Gray character in popular culture, like, that has nothing to do with this book character? And obviously as he evolves through the book, I did see him like get more towards that character, and so like that was a really interesting development to watch. Also, the language, the like philosophical like mediations that happen over like youth and beauty and all of those things are just great. The characters are great. The things that end up happening are so just like not what I was expecting to happen. So this, yeah, I love this book. I really love this book, and this is one of the reasons that I really want to read another one of his plays this month, but I don't think I'm going to have a chance to read them because I'm not taking my Oscar Wilde books back to Switzerland, and I'm only here for another like 4 days, so I don't think I'm going to read another one, but I don't know. Oh, I have read Lord Arthur Saville's Crime as well. There are a few plays in here. There's Lady Windermere's Fan, A Woman of No Importance, An Ideal Husband, and a few more as well. Yeah, I'm definitely going to pick this up at some point because I do want to read more of Dorian Gray's right? do want to read more of Oscar Wilde's writing because I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I didn't say when this was published. This was published in 1819, Lippincott's monthly magazine, but when it was published, the editor at the last minute deleted about 500 words from the like published manuscript, and Oscar Wilde didn't know about that because he thought it was a bit racy. And so I think it was fully published and not censored and written properly and published for 1891. So yeah, that's the Picture Dorian Gray. That's the first repeat of the list because Oscar Wilde made it twice, so that's cool. And then I'm just going to say now that number 1 and number 2 aren't going to be a surprise to anyone who's watched my channel before. I'm fine with that. I don't really care to surprise anyone, so that's fine with me, but just to let you know. The first one is Far From the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. I read this last year for Victober and it was everything, just everything. This is such a good book. It's so good. It's so tabbed, I can't even. This has one of the most beautiful quotes of all time in it. Like, I think when I made a review of this, which I will link somewhere, I read the full paragraph, which is one of my favourite quotes of all time. I just like read it because I was like, I can't even put this into words, I can't get a little bit of it and read it, like I have to just read the whole thing because it's so pretty. Because it is. So this is Far From the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. This was his 4th novel, but it was his first like major success in his lifetime. It was published in 1874, but it was published serially in Cornhill magazine, and basically in this book we follow Bathsheba Everdeen, who is a woman who inherits a farm. She is not married when the book opens, and we basically see a hell of a lot of men trying to marry her and say, I can marry you because then I can run the farm and you can just live your life like a little woman who doesn't do anything. You don't want to dirty your little hands and all of that kind of stuff. And Bathsheba's like, fuck that, I'm running the fucking farm. That is one of the reasons I love this book so much. Bathsheba Everdeen is such, like, I know you're not supposed to put feminist on books that come before feminism happened, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Bitch is a feminist. And I love this book, I love everything about it, I love all the side characters, I love the way that it switches gender roles. You have men doing what traditionally women would have been taught about doing and vice versa. We also have characters like Tess in Tess the D'Urbervilles and like the main character in Two on a Tower at the moment. Like, you have these women who challenge the moral code of Victorians, and I really enjoy reading about that, and I enjoy the sympathy that Thomas Hardy has with women who would not be sympathised in that time. He's a riot and I love him so much. And so yeah, this had to be here. And then the last book, which is obviously my favourite, number 1, is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This was published in 1847 under the pseudonym of Ellis Bell. Again, this is one of the Penguin Classic Deluxe editions. I just think they're pretty. I got this from the museum, I think, actually. Yeah, I got it from the Bronte Passage, got a little stamp in it, which is cute. This book is just, this is one of my favourite books of all time. I reread it early this year and I definitely found that it, I think, ties with my favourite book, which is The Count of Monte Cristo. It used to be that was higher, but on rereading this definitely ties with it now. After that reread I did film a review, so if you would like to watch that I will link it somewhere, although warn you now, like, spare some time because it's pretty friggin' long and I ramble a lot. I love this book, I love everything about this book, I love the characters, I love the setting, I love how it's so just claustrophobic almost. I love just, oh my god, I love everything. I love the weather in this book. Like, how do you love the weather in a book? That's not a thing to love, but I love it. Like, it's such a masterpiece. I love it so much. This is one of those books where, like, if people say they don't like it, I'm okay with it. Like, if people say they don't like Far From the Madding Crowd, I'm like, I'm all up in the face about it. I'm like, what do you mean you don't like it? What do you not like? What is there not to like? Whereas if people say they don't like this, I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, I get it. It's a difficult book to like. I mean, not when my girlfriend said she wasn't keen on it, I was like, that's not okay. But with other people that I care about less, I let it go. It's so well written. The characters are so well developed. The whole story is so intricate and well done. The themes are beautifully, like, just traversed. I don't know even what I'm saying. I'm so in love with this book. I'm so in love with it. It's definitely one of those books that I feel like I will be rereading till the day that I die, and I will be loving just as much till the day I die. Like, this is everything to me. And yeah, so I feel like no one's surprised at Far From the Madding Crowd and Wuthering Heights being 1 and 2, but anyway, that's it. They are all of them. If you have some favourite Victorian novels, please put them down in the description box below. I would love to hear what your favourite Victorian books are because I'm just nosy. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. I hope you're having a great Victober. Bye!